You don't have any more vacations to sow. Why did you leave that ranch?
Doctor, we don't have any more time for any of this now.
But we don't reckon time the same way, do we, Clarice? This is all the time you'll ever have.
Later. Now, please listen to me. We've only got 5...
No! I will listen now. After your father's murder, you were orphaned. You were 10 years old. You went to live with cousins on a sheep and horse ranch in Montana. And?
And one morning, I just ran away.
Not just, Clarice. What set you off? You started at what time?
Early, still dark.
Then something woke you, didn't it? Was it a dream? What was it?
I heard a strange noise.
What was it?
It was... screaming.
No, you idiot. It's the other Hannibal. The other... oh, whatever. Anyway, hey there, YouTube. I'm Yukitsu. This is the Yukitsu Times. Welcome to my channel, and welcome to more Rome 2 Total War. Today we're going to be talking about the Carthaginians. So, as you can see, we've got ourselves the unit roster, so we're just going to start right away with that. For generals, Carthage has some of the more sort of diverse ones. They've got the very cheap general and bodyguard. This one is, of course, just a mobile platform for his radius of general morale effects. You can also use him to hunt down archers at best. But next up, we've got the noble cavalry. This is a shock cavalry unit, which I don't particularly like to put my generals on. The shock cavalry is very good at charging in and quickly destroying a unit and then hopefully being relatively safe. But they're less durable than other types of cavalry in a protracted fight. And lastly, we've got African war elephants. So the problem with African war elephants is that they're a double threat, and that's not necessarily very good to have your general in there, since they become a huge priority for your enemy to take out those elephants, because that will not only cripple your general, but it will also get rid of those elephants out of the field, which are very threatening units. So I personally usually use the general's bodyguard, but there are times where noble cavalry or African war elephants would be appropriate. Typically, the more common one for me to switch to is the noble cavalry, because it's just too dangerous to have them on the African war elephants, especially because they go berserk. Next up, we got the melee infantry. We have the mercenary Iberian swordsmen and the mercenary Gallic warriors. These two types of mercenary troops are very weak. They're relatively inexpensive, however, so it's not too terrible to take them as sort of a flanking force if you would like, but they aren't going to do too much in multiplayer matches. The mercenaries are a mainstay of the Carthaginian force, especially in single player, so you will be seeing quite a few of the mercenary Iberian swordsmen and the mercenary Gallic warriors in play, but I wouldn't take them necessarily in multiplayer just because they're a little bit under armored for their particular role, that being frontline warriors, and they've got pretty bad morale, more importantly, and they haven't really got the weapon damage or attack to back that up to compensate. Next up, we've got the Libyan infantry. This is sort of where we're talking about as far as swordsmen for the Carthaginians. They've got all-around decent statistics. They're very comparable to the Roman similar infantry, and for some reason they've got a very good armor penetrating damage on their little swords there. We've got 12 out of 55, which makes them a little bit better than the Legionnaire in terms of armor penetration. So I like these guys, but they aren't going to hold up against more elite Roman type troops, for example, and I'm using the comparison of Romans since they fight in that style and they're very similar otherwise. So they're a good mid-range unit. I happen to use them around flanks more than anything. I don't use them as my main infantry force. Next up, we've got Spear Infantry, starting with the Sacred Band. Sacred Band are the specific elites of the Carthaginian force. They're fairly good. They're about as good as the sort of like Royal Spartans. They're just a little bit worse in a few categories, but they're very similar in characteristic to the Royal Spartans. Decent all-around unit, but they aren't necessarily going to rack up a lot of kills. They're more defensive. So it's a good one to anchor a flank or something, or to just stall your enemy for a long period of time. Next up, we've got our different types of hoplites here. We've got Libyan hoplites and late Libyan hoplites. These can only really be used in your backline to defend against cavalry attacks. I don't particularly like using them all that often since they're a little bit too light for that specific role or to plug in gaps in your line. I prefer to use the late Carthaginian hoplites and the Carthaginian hoplites, who are a little bit more durable and can stand in your main battle line for a lot longer. They can do okay defensively, they can do okay offensively, so they're not a terrible unit by any stretch of the imagination, and you can use them quite effectively for a multitude of roles. They're not an elite troop, however, so they're not going to fare well in a front-up fight, trading one-on-one against tougher infantry on enemy factions. Next up, you've got the African pikemen. These guys are much like other pikemen. They're very, they're one of the good mid-range pikemen sort of things, like the thorax pikemen. They're about there in terms of efficacy. I don't think that they're actually as cost-effective as things like Spartan pikemen, but they're pretty much in that sort of range of decent to good pikes that I happen to think is most efficient to take. They're not as good as the Hellenic Royal Guard, but they're a lot cheaper, so they make a good center line. Next up, missile infantry. They're very much similar to Rome. They've got Libyan javelin men, Libyan peltasts. Variations sort of on the same thing here. Both of them have very limited ammunition, so just take whichever you happen to have money for if you're going for that. Other than that, they've only got the mercenary Balearic slingers and the mercenary Cretan archers, which are very expensive ranged units, and this makes it very difficult to field a lot of shooting as Carthage. So typically you're going to wind up with a few mercenary Balearic slingers, in my experience, or if you want, you can take a few mercenary Cretan archers instead. It depends on sort of what you're going for. Next up, we've got shot cavalry. They've got the noble cavalry, which is a very strong shot cavalry unit, as well as a decent sort of elite unit if you want to encourage your cavalry force. I personally think that they're not quite good enough to justify their cost in terms of what you're typically going to be doing with the Carthaginian army, simply because I find that the elephants work better, and we'll talk about them a little bit later. But if you don't quite have enough for the African war elephants, and you'd rather have a little bit more speed, since these guys are certainly faster than elephants, go ahead and get the noble cavalry. They're a good unit. They can take most cavalry units one-on-one. Next up, we've got mercenary Iberian cavalry and Carthaginian cavalry. The mercenary Iberian cavalry, only really any good for chasing down archers or fleeing units or anything of that nature. They're way too lightly armored and have way too little health and morale to stick around in any sort of serious fight. So what you want to do with these guys is make sure that they're not fighting anything serious. Preferably, though, you'll take Carthaginian cavalry. These guys are those sort of standard line melee cavalry. They do the job that melee cavalry does, and they're priced pretty much right for that sort of task. Next up, we've got mercenary Numidian cavalry. This is their missile cavalry and their only option for it. They're a fairly expensive unit, Numidian cavalry, and they've not really got great statistics or anything, so I would give these a pass in general. If you are going to play a faction that has missile cavalry, I've been finding other factions that have actual horse archers to be much more effective than the ones with horse javelin men. If you want to use javelins, of course, you've always got pilum on your Libyan infantry, which is pretty effective, actually. Next up, we've got elephants, and these are sort of a defining unit for Carthage, even though there are actually other armies that used elephants and have elephants in this game, so they're not unique in that regard. But they do definitely have elephants in their roster, and they're a pretty potent force for Carthage. They're great for smashing through elite cavalry. They're great for getting around the backs of infantry and causing a lot of panic, because they have got the scare ability, which causes a lot of units to break and flee a lot more rapidly. So anyway, that's all of the Carthaginian units. Let's take a look at their campaign start. So as you can see, like Rome, Carthage has factions just like the Romans do. Unlike different families, they've got different dynasties for their sort of... I'm not actually sure what their government is. I'm assuming sort of some sort of... I have no idea even. Anyway, they've got a Phoenician trade heritage, plus 10% wealth from all commerce buildings. Mercenary armies, minus 40% mercenary upkeep costs, so it is very cost effective for the Carthaginians to maintain mercenaries, unlike other factions. It's still pretty expensive, so do look out for that, but they can do it a lot better than everyone else. Next up, we've got the different factions. You've got the Hananid dynasty. These guys are not very good at forming their own army, so they rely even more on mercenaries than the other factions. They've got plus 10% non-mercenary recruitment cost. Now keep in mind that that's just recruitment cost, so once you've got those armies on the field, they're not going to cost any more than anyone else's. So it's not too bad, but it is pretty hefty there. Next up, we've got statesmen, minor diplomatic bonus with all factions, cultural affinity. And pioneers, plus 10% movement range for all armies and fleets. And this is huge, the ability to move that much faster than everybody else. Next up, Meghanid Dynasty. They've got the minus 20% resistance to foreign occupation on conquest, so they're very good at conquering people. They're corrupt, so they've got a -6% tax rate, and they've got military reform, so -5% upkeep cost for all non-mercenary units. So if you want to turn Carthage into a military machine relying primarily upon the recruitment of Carthaginian troops, the Maganid dynasty is the one that you want to go for here. They make a little bit less money, true, but they're better at conquering places, and so they try to make up for their lack of internal revenue by having more places to draw that revenue from, and lowering the cost of their armies, so that sort of balances out to a certain degree. So they're a very militaristic faction. They're very good for that. Last up is the Barkid dynasty. These guys are named for the Barca family, which is, of course, Hannibal's, and not Hannibal Lecter. Anyway, they've got popular support. They've got a +4 public order bonus from the presence of Punic culture, so they're fairly good at maintaining rule. They've got Punic faith, which gives them a diplomatic penalty to all factions. And this is actually fairly crippling. This means that everybody is pretty much going to declare war on you immediately. It's really brutal. Next up is agricultural reforms, +5% wealth from agricultural buildings. The problem with Carthage is that they don't have any real agricultural buildings at the start, and it's harder for them to access them to a certain degree. So I think the Barkid dynasty has a much harder time than the other ones. I'm going to use the Hananid dynasty because there's something I want to show with pioneers that could be interesting to some of you. But if you use the other ones, obviously you can't use the same start because Pioneers is actually a very defining ability in the first few moves. But the other ones on the whole operate in the same way and should draw on the same general strategy. It's just they take their time to move the way that I'm moving a little bit more. So let's get this started, and I will see you on the campaign map. Okay, and here we are in Carthage, which is our faction capital. As you can see, our empire is spread out quite thin, and we've got a lot of different places that we are going to need to sort of watch out for. But we do start off with some strong allies that are very loyal to us. There's Libya to the south, and we've got Nova Carthago to the west. And the thing about these guys, as our client states, is that the way the game works, they're very loyal to us because they're going to end up in a lot of wars along with us. So we're going to start making the early moves that we make here. Actually, I'll show you where we're going to be going first. I like to try and blitz Syracuse and Eulalia early on as the Carthaginians, and the reason for that would be because I want to take them all over very quickly. And we start over at war with Kartuba from Carthage. So we're going to take this army led by Mago over here, of the Maganid dynasty, of course. Move him on up over here. And we're going to reinforce this army with more troops. And that way we're going to be able to take Kartuba next turn with our army, even though it's a walled city, which makes that a bit brutal. Taking Syracuse so early is a little bit more tricky. The way we're going to be doing that is by moving this army out here to Lulibang. We're going to take him out of there and move him past our spy down here. And since we're of the Hananid dynasty, we can actually make it to Syracuse by next turn. So the reason that these guys can do it is that you also need to recruit some Libyan hoplites. So don't expect to be able to do this with the other factions here. So we're going to set up a spy network here and then assassinate their general next turn. Lastly, to take out Eulalia early on, you need a little bit of luck, but what we need to do here is raise our forces. We've got all these different generals to choose from. They're all pretty much the same, so we're going to choose the other dynasties one. He's free, so let's raise that army, and we're going to raise him with a war elephant. So we're going to move him off into... Actually, I forget something here. If I recall correctly, I can get these on the islands, so I'm not going to worry about that. So let's move these guys into Hannos Navigators, the fleet over here. And as you can see, we can also just barely reach Eulalia by next turn. So we're going to go ahead and do that.
Steady as we go.
Looking to, yeah.
We must rest a while.
So we can just barely reach Eulalia with our fleet next turn. So we're going to go ahead and do that, unless the problem is that Rome sometimes blockades them, in which case we can't go ahead and do that. What we can do instead, though, is then go blitz Rome. So, well, Neapolis, not Rome proper, but anyway, that's our early moves here. We've got open building slots in Carthago, Lilybaeum, and a lot of other places. They're not necessarily all that useful for us right off the bat for a lot of reasons, but what we're going to do is make Carthage our local recruitment grounds for that region, just because it's so hard to recruit troops from where we are across our empire. Carthago we're going to leave as is for a turn, and Lilybaeum we're going to go ahead and make a consecrated ground on, just because we kind of need it desperately. What's happening here is that Roman culture is coming from Syracuse, Cosentia, and Brundisium, and it is dramatically overwhelming the cultural production of Carthaginian culture in Lilybaeum. So we need to convert these guys as fast as is possible. So that takes up pretty much all of our money. We're going to go ahead and open up our diplomacy tab here. As you can see, Rome really doesn't like us. The Etruscan League does like us, but we're going to declare war on them anyway because we're dicks. You know, basically just be as jerky as possible. One of the things you can do is you can try and get a trade agreement with them, but you know, look, they don't even want to take that anyway. So we're just gonna try and go through. Oops, shoot. Well, while I'm here, I'm just gonna pick my technology here. Okay. So while we're here, we're just gonna figure out if anybody's willing to do a trade agreement. The thing is that your odds right now are pretty low. You haven't proven yourself in any way, shape, or form. But usually one person is willing to play ball with me here, so I just go through all of them and see who is willing. They're close, so I might be able to next turn. Libya is pretty 50-50 so far. No, they're not willing to this turn. We'll try again next turn, but this is sort of how I do trade with Carthage, is I just sort of say, okay, well, I'm going to try talking to everybody and see if anybody's willing to go ahead. So we're going to hit end turn. And unfortunately, Rome has decided to blockade Eulalia. What we might do then is declare war on Rome, attack their fleet at port, and then attack Eulalia directly. It's one way of doing that. I'm not necessarily sure if I'm going to want to do that, but it looks like we might have to. Okay, so the Etruscan League.
Blood and honor has bound us in friendship, but...
Okay, well, whatever. You know, I don't actually remember having a non-aggression pact with those guys, but apparently we did have one. I don't know. I was going to break it anyway by, you know, obviously attacking them. Anyway, this could take potentially a little while, so I'll cut the video here and get back to you once we get to the screen. Okay, so some random things happened that sometimes do happen, is that the Turdetani came to us with a peace agreement proposal. They offered us $500 and a peace agreement, or sorry, the agreement was that they would become our client state, so they are currently now our client state. We're going to probably attack them eventually anyway, but this gives us a chance to sort of build up along their border a little bit here, especially once Carthage is built this muster field so that we can recruit better troops, which is kind of crucial given our current predicaments and situation here. So over here we've got the heirs of Venetia, and we've got ourselves this little army over here. One of those sort of things you can do with the Carthaginians is recruit mercenaries fairly cheaply. Looks like there are no good options right here right now. I wonder if they got hired by... No, they obviously haven't. Well, we'll see how that works here. We'll declare war on Rome right now. It's one of our mission objectives anyway, so let's go ahead and do that.
Do not waste time on pleasantries and babble.
This is probably not the smartest of moves that you can make, just to dislodge the Romans from there, but this lets you take away those ships there. We're going to deal with that later, since I don't think I'm going to show you all of the different fights that I can get into and actually do fairly poorly in. But we're going to start off by, you know, what I'm actually probably going to do here, since I've got so many different fights that I have to do, is do the fights, then get back to you and talk to you about sort of Carthage after you've done these sort of opening moves. So let's go ahead and do that. You've seen me take enough of these sort of little villages anyway. Before we do that, though, I'm going to show you one little trick to make your armies capable of doing this, since if my armies look a little bit too weak, they would be. So what I can do here is I can take my general and I can replace him with one of these other ones, and basically use the proper African war elephants instead of the lousy general's bodyguard as his unit here. So we're going to hire this with the elephant. So now Hannibal's been replaced with this guy, and he's going to go march on Syracuse. What I can do is then have Hannibal take the army back next turn, except riding the elephant, because frankly, the Carthaginian generals, Hannibal in particular, should be riding on an elephant in the first place. So we're going to go ahead and poison these guys.
Into the dark.
Okay, we've injured him. That is definitely enough. So we're going to go ahead and invade here. So I will see you once I have finished taking over Syracuse and the North Islands. Okay, and we're back. We've managed to take both Eulalia and Syracuse. This is turn 2, by the way. This is going to help make us a very potent force really quickly indeed. One of the things that is nice about taking Syracuse is that we immediately get a farm which is of the correct type, so this place is going to start producing our food a little bit earlier than we would otherwise have to wait. The problem, of course, being that our armies are fairly battered, still fairly spread out, but they are poised to take Rome on in, for example, Cosentia. We're going to go ahead and recruit more units here because we desperately are in need of them. We're going to upgrade our general and give him, we're going to actually give him zeal. We want to be able to have our elephants just wander straight over people. Our general here actually died, so we replaced him again. Going through a lot of generals very quickly. Now, the thing that I did was I pretended I was friends with the Etruscan League, used the Etruscans to take out the Roman fleet, who came in. They killed both the Etruscan ships, and then I swept in and took Eulalia, wiping them out. So, you know, deceit and treachery and all that other good stuff that a good general should aspire to. Now, normally I don't have my game sort of spaz out a little bit there. Normally I would be sending this army over to Kartuba. What I'm instead going to do is send it back to Carthage, and I'm going to have them basically just garrison it to remove unhappiness. Looks like I'm going to have to force march that just a little bit. Obviously, they started outside the city. That makes sense, I guess. So Carthage is now going to be happy enough. So basically, what we need to do now is build up our armies so that we're ready to take on Rome itself. We can land in Neapolis, and we can attack up through Cosentia, and this is going to be our sort of invasion plan of the Rome faction. Now, there is going to be a distinct problem, and that is that the Romans are using stronger units than us right now. So we're going to have to make careful use of the units and whatever sort of mercenaries we can acquire along the way, and just try our very best to outwit the Roman army, make great use of those elephants. They're a huge boon to our armies. They're going to be a necessary one to win this battle, so that's going to come together and hopefully let us defeat Rome. They're the only ones we're currently at war with. I think we're actually considered a little bit more powerful, so we might be able to get other factions on board with trade agreements so that now. You may speak well. It doesn't look like it. Just gonna run through again since if I can funding a war against Rome is expensive and not really that pleasant.
If I can give you,
but at least we didn't have to take down Turdetania.
I listen because
makes
your
it
people
a little bit easier to be in the position that we're in here. These guys don't like us. That's fine.
I greet you in my master's feared name.
The thing is, right now we have 0 trade resources, so it's going to make it a little bit difficult for us to get trade agreements, and that's sort of showing through right now. Once we've gotten some of the Roman regions, we'll have access to wine to trade, and we'll have access to olives to trade, so that'll all make our lives a lot easier. So we're going to build up our army here. We're going to march up to Cosentia. We're going to march from Cosentia to Brundisium, and that'll give us all of Magna Graecia. That's one of the regions that we have to control. We've got control of all of this sort of province of Eulalia over here, and once we've sort of consolidated our position, it becomes pretty... I don't know why this keeps happening. Computer's a bit glitchy because my hard drive is getting full, but once we've taken that over, it might be possible for us to take over Ars and Numantia. The reason that we don't have to take over Bosun is that they're a client state, and that counts for the objectives here. The reason I'm trying to do this is I kind of want to actually control 3 provinces. That's the objective that we're trying to accomplish here. So once we've managed to do that, we'll have a firm grasp of a lot of the Mediterranean, and our economic basis will let us sort of fuel a lot more armies. Now, we are under threat from the south here. The people down here in Sidimus typically like to declare war on us. We're going to have to rely on our Libyan allies to sort of protect us for a little while. One of the things that we can do if it looks like they're getting too close and it looks like they're going to potentially defeat us is to raise a fleet in... actually, did that say I could recruit an army? Oh yeah, we can recruit more armies. I forgot. We can start with 6 with Carthage. So we could actually just recruit another army and have them go down to meet them in Thapsus and protect our allies here. Or we could retake it and keep Thapsus for our own. So there are some options to sort of counter that. But anyway, this is sort of how I start with the Carthaginians. I take the problem that they have of being too spread out and I exacerbate it quite a bit. But that's, you know me, I'm very, very aggressive. So anyhow, this is my look at the Carthaginian faction on the campaign map. Let's get over to a battle of them. Okay, so here we are on the battlefield here. We've got ourselves a Carthaginian force.
Archers!
I've got myself these Cretan archers that are the only shooting I've got here. The reason, of course, being that it's a foggy day, so I can't really emphasize the shooting of Carthage, which is very unfortunate since they've got a fairly good shooting as a faction. Let's get our army set up here in the sort of way that I like to have them set up. Got our African pikemen in the center here. They're a very sort of strong unit. Then we're going to have our hoplites ready to intercept units on the flanks or to assist in the cavalry fight. I expect that he could win a conventional cavalry fight against me were it not for the fact that I've got elephants to sort of back up the charge. So we're going to have 1 less elephants, or 1 less cavalry unit on the right flank, and we're going to have 2 on the left flank, so slightly stronger left flank than right. That should be okay though. So normally I would want to have more shooting with the Carthaginian force, but honestly it's just not worth it when it's this foggy out. It makes it a pretty noticeable difference to how well you can shoot, so you kind of see more rushy armies here. Let's see, looking through the fog here, we've got tons and tons of foot companions from our Macedonian opponent here, which is no real surprise. They just sort of are an elite kind of phalanx unit. I'm expecting he's also got some Aspis companion cavalry or some companion cavalry tucked away somewhere. So one of the unfortunate things about the fog against Macedon is that since I can't really shoot at him very effectively, he can just sort of take these pike units and they'll be pretty much invulnerable to shooting, so I can't really force him out of position. Let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's got to have more units than that somewhere, so I'm going to sort of keep an eye out for those. My army as a whole, I'm going to keep relatively further back. I just want to get my archers into range here. I want my African pikemen to be able to sort of match the frontage here, so actually let's get all our infantry and try and spread them out a bit. I want to be able to flank him if possible.
Cavalry! Advance at speed!
Okay, so I can't actually see anything in particular here.
Understood.
I do wish archers had a little bit more range in this game, or ranged units in general, come to think of it, but you know, that's just a minor thing. Yeah, there's some companion cavalry there. Well, I might as well try and charge through them.
Cavalry! Riders, advance! Elephants ready for battle! Come on, ride up quickly now!
Going to get our African pikemen into phalanx formation. Try and do a good job of holding back his infantry as they rush in here.
Archers!
And we're going to try and get our Libyan infantry around his flanks. Now, he's got his lines a little bit sort of distorted because of the rear assault here. the hell's going on back here? Looks like he had some hidden archers and other trickery up his sleeve here. My elephants are rampaging here. That's not necessarily good, not necessarily bad. Looks like they're rampaging through the archers, so that's perfectly fine by me. Okay, so I want to move these units around the back as fast as possible. Okay, so I don't want to really fight those guys directly here. These foot companion front to front, that would just be suicidal, but let's get our commander over here. Let's try and get other units around the back here. Looks like our midline, though, is faltering due to the superiority of his infantry to mine. Not altogether unexpected. I'm not sure if those guys are in phalanx or not, so I'm going to try and not get into that fight. God, I hate Hellenic Royal Guard. Our companion infantry here.
Our orders, access. Orders. Cavalry, charge. Elephants ready for battle. Pikemen, engage.
Alrighty, so let's get all our pikemen that are remaining, get them through this. That'll help out a little bit.
Orders! Fire command!
Libyan infantry.
For honor! Ready for orders! Waiting orders!
You'll note our opponent's complete lack of missile troops. That's just another byproduct of these stupid maps that are foggy. Alright, so let's get these elephants in here.
Ready! Ready! Riders advance! Ready to me!
My lord!
Forward! Cavalry! Engage! Forward!
Okay, so things are starting to clear up in a couple places for us. That's good. Let's get these ones that are in melee whipped.
Our orders!
Want them to do a little bit better here.
Speed! Engage! Archers! By your command!
See what our general's up to here. So the thing about this fight is it's incredibly chaotic, and that's intentional. A battle against a pike phalanx that's sort of structured and ordered is playing right towards their advantages. You don't want to be doing that where possible. So we've deliberately let this degenerate into a sort of form of chaos here, so I want to charge these guys around whatever the hell side that is, I don't even know. Just keep our units inspired up as much as possible, but as you can see, I'm sort of swarming my units around. I've got my elephants mixed in here, in units that typically, can sort of do really well against elephants. And hopefully we can take out this unit of foot companions before my units start sprouting. Maybe that'll keep my units in there a little bit longer. I just need to last long enough that these foot companions shatter here. Okay, those ones are gone. So this is not strictly speaking how you necessarily want to fight as Carthage, but this is sort of how you want to fight against the Macedonian who spams companion infantry. The reason here being that, of course, their units are much tougher in a straight-up confrontation here, so we've had to resort to swarming him around, turning things into sort of chaos, and just making things very much not the sort of fight that they can win. But normally what we want to do is actually what they were doing, and have a very sort of structured battle line. We're gonna let our skirmishers pick at this foot companion while I reorganize my lines a little bit here. Where the hell are my African pikemen? Oh, those are hoplites. African pikemen. You are too weak to stand against them, so we're gonna get these guys from way the hell back here. Looks like these ones broke though anyway, and that is our victory. So a very hectic battle. This just sort of is how I build my Carthaginian army. It's got some more flexibility, as you can see, by contrast to my opponent's army, which was very, very small and very, very elite. Actually, that's a tough army to beat. I didn't notice all those chevrons he had. That's why he got through my line so quickly. Anyway. Oh, crap. Okay, so let's just dodge that, sorry. The thing about this army, though, is that by contrast to that Macedonian army, it's got a lot of sort of flexibility. It's got a strong sort of front line with those African pikemen, but it also has these more maneuverable Libyan infantry and these more maneuverable Carthaginian hoplites. This lets me do a wider variety of things, but it does mean that if, you know, for instance, he takes those pikes, I will lose the pike fight. He will push into me and I will lose that. It means that I actually did switch this up a little bit compared to what I actually brought against him. But for example, if I get into a missile fight against somebody who's got superior missiles, I have got some cavalry that I can use to try and force that, and I have got enough infantry to assault that, and so on and so forth. So Carthaginians are a very versatile faction, but they can't really rely on any one unit type by itself to carry the day. If I took all African pikemen, I would have gotten steamrolled by that army simply because his pikes were so much better. He could have just pushed through multiple ranks of pikemen, multiple units of pikemen with each unit, and just absolutely trounced me that way. It was only because I had some Libyan infantry and these Carthaginian hoplites that I was able to envelop him, circle around and crush his forces in that particular way in that sort of hectic, chaotic battle, and use those elephants as well to good effect. If I were against an opponent that took a lot of sword units, I could hold them up much better in the front with these pikemen, but I would have lost the fight with these Libyan infantry and these Carthaginian hoplites. But hopefully they would have lasted long enough for me to smash into those sword units with these war elephants much more directly, and the same thing with the Carthaginian cavalry, is just fend off his cavalry. So, you know, you've got a lot of options with the Carthaginians. It's just that you will lose against a dedicated version of whatever it is you're trying to do. So the Greeks will beat you in a hoplite fight, the Macedonians will beat you in a pikeman fight, and the Romans will beat you in a sword infantry fight. So try and figure out which of your units are going to be your strength against the faction you're fighting up against, figure out where you're going to be weak, and try and accommodate for that in whichever way you can by countering their strategy directly. That's how you sort of win as Carthage. Anyway, this has been my look at Carthage. I hope you found this entertaining. I hope you found this informative. And of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time.